I've spent quite a bit of time on this channel showing you ways to improve your tabletop experience, but what about transporting your minis outside of your home? In this video we're going to be looking at the ways in which you can transport your minis safely and securely at little to no cost, and with a particular focus on making a personalised transport case. Let's box those bugs and manage those marines. For the roll. There's plenty of videos on YouTube, suggestions on Reddit, and ideas across the internet as to how you can store your minis for transport safely and securely, ranging from cheap and easy to those that can actually cost more than your army itself. We're going to be looking at a wide range of options to fit whatever budget you may have, but rather than being just a review video, we're also going to be looking at a personal favourite of mine that you can customise to really draw out your personality. I mean, it wouldn't be a for the roll video without some sort of customisation, would it? To set the benchmark for our options, I had a little look at some off-the-shelf transport cases that you can buy online. My main area of comparison will be the price of these options, as well as the ability to hold the 2,000 point armies that most of us play with against these transport cases that you can buy online. Rigid and enclosed cases like these, where you magnetise your bases, were my main benchmark point, coming in at around £100 to £150 per case for a standard size, depending on the materials and the build quality. The only real con to these cases is simply the price point. I can see why they're as expensive as they are, but for most of us, spending that amount of money just to be able to transport your minis isn't really something that's a must-have. So, with the benchmark in mind, let's see about some quick-fire alternatives. Cardboard boxes are our budget-friendly basic for this list. We all accumulate cardboard boxes without even realising it in our day-to-day lives. Packages from deliveries and purchases we made in stores can be repurposed to transport your miniatures. The pros for cardboard boxes? Well, they're free, and they'll come in an array of sizes to be able to transport whatever miniature that you can think of. The cons though, however, is they're not really that sturdy, only standing up to the lightest of knocks and bashes, and you can't really secure down your minis properly, leading to potential breaks and snags if it was to roll around. A way to mitigate your minis bashing into each other is by padding the boxes with pillow stuffing or foam. Once again, very cheap or potentially free, and will add an extra layer of protection. The caveat to this though is that if you have minis with lots of sharp and pointy edges, then they have a habit of getting caught on the foam or stuffing and potentially cause further breaks if you're not careful when you're taking them out. The next option, and one that I started out my miniature hobbying with, is a cheap toolbox. Easily picked up from your local hardware store, online or second hand, these can be very useful in the beginning. Ideally you want to find one with removable storage trays and a lower compartment, which most toolboxes have. The pros for toolboxes is that they're solid and robust, designed to be hard wearing. There's also a large array of capacities for all the different sizes you may need. They're fairly cheap, and they have multiple storage compartments for all your different sized miniatures. The cons though, is that minis still have the issue of moving around, not as bad as in cardboard boxes, but still have the potential to cause breakages. And they're also not designed for this particular purpose, so you may not be able to utilise all the space available. A potential fix to these problems is getting yourself some magnets on the bottoms of your bases, as well as some magnetic sticky back sheets from companies like 3M or others, cutting these to size with scissors and then sticking them to the trays or bottoms. All in, you could pick up everything you need for this for around £30 or $40. Another handy tip is if you can find older metal toolboxes, then you won't need to buy any magnetic sheets, and then you can just stick the magnets to your bottom of your bases and you're finished. Another great solution are storage boxes like these. Once again, easily picked up from any supermarket or home goods store, these boxes have many great benefits to consider. They're solid and robust, a huge range of sizes to fit whatever you may need, from tiny trinket boxes where you can store spare weapons or one-off minis, to huge boxes where you can store multiple boards worth of terrain. They're easy to stack and transport, and they're relatively inexpensive. The cons though, is that once again the minis have the potential of moving around inside, causing any further potential breakages. However, this is mitigated by the idea that you could buy boxes that are specifically designed for the size that you need. Also, almost all storage boxes tend to be a bit bland, and even though it's only a personal preference of mine, they don't really have a good way of showing off your army. A few years ago, these boxes here did the rounds on YouTube and on the internet, showcasing how these would be the next best thing for transporting your miniatures. If you haven't heard of them already, they're called really useful boxes, and they actually are very handy for us in the wargaming hobby. You see, the size here specifically, the standard A4 4-litre size, is actually a really good fit for most infantry units. The other benefits to these boxes are that they stack really well, have solid clips for keeping your lids firmly in place, as well as the internal design is just flat. No bumps or bevels between the sidewalls and the floor of the box, allowing you to use more space. You can buy magnetic sheets that fit into this as one piece really well without having to cut anything up. Also, you can buy baking trays from your local pound or dollar store and fit these in as well. I had to bend the lip of mine to make them fit, but because it's so snug, it stops any movement in transportation whatsoever. You can also get larger boxes for your vehicles, or lids that extend up to allow taller infantry units to be standing as well. Another suggestion if you're intending on using multiples of these boxes for transporting your miniatures is suitcase straps. I picked up this pack of 2 for less than £5 and you can then transport multiple boxes at one time in one hand. The cost of these boxes is actually quite reasonable too, with the A4 one I just showed you coming in around £5 to £10 depending on the right vendor, and getting gradually more expensive as you get larger in size. For my UK viewers, the cheapest I've managed to find them was through B&M, with the A4 box coming in at £5. Stocks are fairly limited, so if you're intending on buying a few, you may have to make multiple trips. My last suggestion is one that I think combines all of the features we've been looking for in a transport case if you're willing to put in a little bit of effort. A few others on the internet have suggested this, but I don't think it's quite got the recognition that it deserves. The paper storage unit from Ikea called the Harvmatta is really good for what we need, and all for a shockingly low £17. For the price, I was really quite shocked as to how good it is. A metallic black finish, removable metallic shelves, and an easy slot-saver design. The trays do initially come with some cork sheeting glued down, but with a little careful pulling, these do come off without much fuss, leaving you with 2 benefits: a magnetic tray for your minis to stick to, and cork sheeting that makes great basing material. Win-win! The trays measure out to just over 12 inches by 10 inches. The cork sheeting pulls off quite nicely, but if you do happen to tear it like I have here, just work your way through it. You may find that there's some sticky residue from the glue. This can be removed with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and a little bit of elbow grease. It's also large enough to store a full 2,000 point army inside with room to spare. Now, as much as I do love this product, it does have some drawbacks right out of the box. The shelf positioning isn't as flexible as its mainline competition, with no real ability to adjust the shelf level to compensate for the size of your miniatures without removing a tray. Standard marine sized models will fit nicely, but anything with a banner or tendrils will require you to remove a shelf to make it fit, limiting your capacity. As the product isn't designed as a transport case, there's also no handle or easy way to carry it. There's also no frontage to the unit, meaning that the shelves are able to just fall out if the case is tipped forward. My last and quite frankly main concern of this is the rigidity of the unit. As it's just designed to hold paperwork and sit on a desk or a filing cabinet, it's not exactly sturdy in its construction, with the roof and walls being out of flex with any slight movement. Carrying this as it is from anywhere but the bottom puts me on edge to say the least. Now, with all these concerns in mind, why am I such a big fan of this unit? Simply put, it's down to how much we can make it stand up to its competition at a much lower price point. There are a few ways that we can make this piece 10 times better, the first of which is simply to use suitcase straps that I mentioned earlier as a way of giving the piece more rigidity and helping with the ability to carry. This is the cheapest of my suggestions, with the unit and the straps coming in at just £22, which is an absolute bargain if you ask me. The second suggestion requires you to have or have access to a filament 3D printer. Now if you don't have one, stick with me as I'm going to show you how you can get a very similar result without the need for one. I came across this design on MakerWorld by Lock, which is an upgrade kit for the Harvmatta. It comes with 4 supports for the corners as well as additional inserts to create more tracks for the shelves to sit on, pretty much solving 2 of the 3 main issues in support capacity and rigidity. The print is very well designed, allowing you to simply slot them into place without the need for glue, but you can always add this should you wish to. All in, it took around 26 hours to print everything. The files are completely free and I've linked them in the description below. If you do download them, please make sure to comment on the post and let Lock know how amazing of a resource this is. I printed mine in white filament so you can clearly see the additions that have been made in the footage, but if you do happen to have black filament, I really suggest this as it will make it look like a complete unit that was originally designed this way. I then found a handle design that I liked, again on MakerWorld, which I've linked in the description below, and printed this. This handle is designed to take M4 screws which you can pick up from your local hardware store or online. Now, if you don't have a 3D printer, you can head to your local hardware store and pick up some of this C-shaped channeling that's used for organising wires and such. I bought a single long piece that I then cut into lengths, sanding down the cut lines and back of the channeling to give a rough surface for the gel superglue to adhere to. I then placed the C-channeling in between each of the levels to give my trays double the amount of options in terms of heights and where they sit. To solve the rigidity issue, I thought about installing brackets or something similar, but only really needing to secure those locking tabs. I decided on more of a crafter's approach, using a milliput and superglue combo. Applying the milliput to the locking tabs and then covering this with a layer of liquid superglue and allowing this to fully dry gives us a really strong and stable lock to those tabs without the need for brackets or bolts. You can also then pick up a drawer handle or such from your local hardware store to act as a carrying handle. The rest of my modifications are exactly the same whether you use the 3D printer or not. I started by marking out the centre of the top to be able to mount the printed handle. With the metal case being quite thin, drilling holes was fairly simple. Just be careful not to put too much pressure when you're drilling like I did here. The handle was then mounted to the top using some M4 nuts and bolts, giving us a sturdy carrying handle. At this point, I custom cut perspex sheets that arrived in the post. You can pick up perspex sheets from your local hardware store, but I found this to be much more expensive and wasteful than just ordering custom sized pieces from the internet. This piece cost me £10 including delivery, whereas my local hardware store wanted $45 for a sheet that I would then need to cut to size myself. It's a no-brainer if you ask me. With this ready to go, it was time to fit my hinges for the perspex front door. Once again, I picked up these small hinges from my local hardware store for about £2. I marked my holes and then began the task of drilling all the holes that I'd need for both the case and the perspex sheet. The last extra piece was to fit a magnetic door catch, once again bought from a local hardware store for around £2. The bolts I used to connect the hinges and the door catch were M3 8mm bolts, giving just enough clearance for everything to fit. Bear in mind that for both the hinges and the door catch, I need to slide back 3D printed shelves to allow the M3 bolts that I used to fit. But there was more than enough room there to make this all work. The next step was to start bringing everything together. I removed the perspex door and hinges and then gave the inside of the unit a coat of matte black spray paint so that everything looks uniform. I then moved on to spraying the sidewalls with a couple layers of gold. I only wanted full coverage of the gold in the centre of the side panel for my symbol that you saw in the beginning. Everything else was going to be covered in a later step, so we didn't need to be neat. Whilst the gold layers were drying, I printed and cut out some stencils that I found online. One for the Ultramarines chapter symbol, as well as the Tyranids High Fleet symbol for my second transport case. I then added the stencil to the sides using a cheap glue stick to give some basic adhesion, and using a blue gloss, sprayed the outer shell completely. After giving the pieces a few layers of matte varnish to give the paint a protective layer, I could then remove the protective film from the perspex door and refit this to the unit. I suggest leaving the film on the perspex until the very end to save any scratches occurring. I also fancied adding a few extra decorative additions to my case in the way of purity seals, an iconic symbol for any Space Marine fan. I found these 3D print files online for free, once again on MakerWorld, which is linked in the description below. A non-3D printed suggestion is to make these out of air-dried clay and cut up some small Halloween skulls that you can then buy online, which then give you a very similar effect. Let me know if you'd like to see a tutorial for this in a future video. I added a magnet to the rear of the purity seal, making it removable should I wish it to be. I also mocked up a few different purity rights to attach to the seals with help from Reddit for the wording. Should you wish to print these yourselves, I've uploaded the files to my Patreon page for free so that anyone can access it, so help yourself. To give the rights that weathered and battle-hardened look, I went back to the old faithful crafter's trick of staining the paper with a wet tea bag. You can also use old coffee granules, but I find this gives a bit of a darker colour than we might want. Whilst wet, scrunch up the paper and then place it on a baking tray in an oven for just a couple of minutes to dry out the paper. You can then begin to tear sections away to give even more of a battle damaged effect. Last but certainly not least, a little splatter using a dark red paint and an old toothbrush will bring this to life. You can then attach the paper to the purity seal with some adhesive glue and let dry. Now, you could certainly call the case done here. Minis isn't the only thing we transport to play the game we love. So I added some additional brackets to the rear to support a custom fit box that I designed and 3D printed that attaches to the rear of the case using more of the magnetic catches that we use for the Perspex door. The box is designed to be able to fit your mission deck, measuring tape and dice all together. I felt the top of the case was also a little bit bland, so I designed these additions to fill the space whilst also having a very handy additional function. With measurements of 9, 3, 2 and 1 inches, these combat gauges are great for quickly confirming the most common measurements we make in the game. The magnet drilled and glued to the rear means it sticks to our case, so it's one less thing for us to find a place to store. Plus, there's also one for your opponent. If you fancy printing these yourself, the 3D printing files for both the back storage box and the combat gauges are available to all my Patreon members at all paid tiers. Patreon memberships start at just $4 a month, giving you access to the private Discord servers where you'll find me and other like-minded crafters, as well as many other great benefits for supporting the channel. So there you have it, a transport case that I think looks 10 times better than any of its competition. Let's see how it stacks up in terms of cost. The price point for an off-the-shelf transport case was between £100 to £150. The Harvmatta case from Ikea was £17. The custom cut Perspex door was £10 delivered. Hinges £4 each. Magnetic door catch £2 each. The M4 8mm nuts and bolts were £8 for a large multi-pack. The carrying handle £5, and spray paints and lacquer were £20 total. The 3D printed parts used were around £5 in filament in total, which then offsets the cost of not needing to buy a carrying handle. So, in total, our custom carry case is around £70, coming in even less if you already have some of those supplies already. Personally, I love the look of these transport cases and think they do a fantastic job of transporting our minis and tools safely and securely to play the full game. But let me know what you think. I'd love to know your opinions and to know if you think this will work for you too. I'd like to thank the channel producer, Danny H, and all the other Patreon members. Your support means the world to me and I couldn't do this without you. If you'd also like to support the channel, a link to my Patreon page is in the description below, with tiers starting at just $4 per month. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.